I never thought I'd be the person posting here, but after what happened at our engagement dinner, I need to get this out. Picture this. I'm sitting at the head table of this fancy restaurant we'd booked for our engagement celebration. White tablecloths, soft lighting, forks clinking against plates as everyone finishes dessert. My throat is already starting to feel tight, that familiar itch creeping in because someone at the far end ordered something with cross-contamination risk, but I'd taken my meds and I thought I was fine. Then my fiancé, let's call him Alex, leans over with this grin he gets when he thinks he's being hilarious, holds up a small dish he'd apparently asked the waiter to bring separately, and says loud enough for the whole table to hear, "Babe, try this, it's peanut-free, I swear." He slides it toward me. It's tiramisu, my absolute favorite dessert. And my deadly allergy. I freeze. The scent hits me first, rich coffee and that unmistakable nutty undertone from the hazelnut liqueur they always use. My heart slams against my ribs. Everyone's watching, waiting for me to laugh at the prank. His mom chuckles first, that nervous little laugh she does when she's pretending something's cute. His sister covers her mouth, but her eyes are sparkling with secondhand glee. His dad just raises an eyebrow and keeps eating like this is normal entertainment. The silence from my side of the table is deafening. My mom stares at her plate. My brother shifts in his seat but says nothing. My best friend, sitting next to me, goes rigid. I can feel her tension radiating. Alex is still grinning, waiting for me to play along, to pretend it's funny, so he can tell the story later about how he got me good. He really thought he'd almost won. Thought I'd smile weakly, push the plate away, and everyone would laugh about how dramatic I am about my little allergy. I know how this sounds, but hear me out. I've spent 8 years managing this allergy around him, labeling cabinets, double-checking menus, carrying extra EpiPens on every date. 8 years of quietly making sure nothing ever went wrong. And in one moment, he weaponized it for laughs. My hand hovered over the fork. The room smelled like coffee and impending disaster. My throat tightened further, not from the peanuts yet, but from something else. Something clicked. Not anger. Clarity. Maybe I should have just stayed quiet. Smiled it off like I always had. But I couldn't. Not anymore. I didn't know then that I had all the ammunition I needed. Years of screenshots, medical records, even old texts where I'd begged him to take it seriously. I didn't know a complete stranger at the next table was already reaching for his phone. But they were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. I sat there in that restaurant, the tiramisu still untouched in front of me, the scent of coffee and hazelnut hanging in the air like a threat. The low hum of conversations from other tables felt miles away. My eyes drifted across the room. Crystal glasses catching the candlelight, waiters gliding between tables, everyone pretending this was just another celebration. For a second, I let myself take it all in, the perfect facade we'd spent months planning. The flowers I'd chosen, the seating chart I'd agonized over so no one would feel slighted. All of it so carefully curated. From the outside, we looked like the picture-perfect, blended family finally coming together. Alex and I had been together 8 years, engaged for 6 months. I'm 32 now, a project manager at a tech firm where I lead cross-functional teams of 20 people, deadlines, budgets, stakeholder management, the works. People at work call me the closer because I can calm a room full of panicked engineers and get everyone aligned. Alex is 34, charming sales guy, always the life of the party. His family is loud and affectionate in that performative way, big hugs, inside jokes, stories retold 100 times. My side is quieter, more reserved. Together, we looked like we balanced each other out. The engagement photos on the table were proof. All of us smiling, arms around each other, like nothing could ever go wrong. But if you grew up inside those walls, both sets of walls, you'd know it was never that simple. Let me back up and introduce myself properly.
I'm Emily.
Like I said, 32, successful enough that I bought my own condo at 28, paid off my student loans early, the whole independent woman package. At work, I managed teams. At home, growing up, I was the fixer. The responsible one. The one who remembered birthdays, mediated arguments, made sure everyone had what they needed without being asked. My mom is the emotional thermostat of our house. If she's warm, everyone relaxes, sudden bursts of affection, homemade meals, compliments flowing. If she's cold, the air turns thick. Conversations drop to whispers. You walk on eggshells, waiting for the thaw. She never yells. Her weapon is silence, erasure. You cease to exist until you apologize for whatever invisible line you crossed. She's never wrong. If something hurts her, it's because you meant it to. She's always the victim, even when she's the one holding the knife. My dad is the classic enabler. Don't upset your mother, he'd say quietly whenever I'd try to speak up as a teenager. He'd pretend not to see the favoritism, the way my younger brother got away with everything while I was held to impossible standards. He chooses peace over justice every time. Keeps his head down, focuses on work, comes home, and retreats to his study. He's kind in small ways, slipping me cash when I was struggling in college, but he never once stood between me and the storm. Then there's my brother, Ryan, 29. Golden child through and through. He dropped out of college twice. Both times Mom cried about how stressed he was and paid for him to try again somewhere easier. When he finally graduated, it was a family triumph. Meanwhile, I worked 2 jobs to put myself through school and got a quiet, good job. Ryan still lives at home. No rent, no pressure to move out. He sides with Mom instinctively, always has. If there's conflict, he's the one who texts me later. Why do you always have to make things difficult? On Alex's side, it's different, but somehow the same energy. His sister, Lauren, is the smug one, the scapegoat who flipped the script and now enjoys watching others struggle. Growing up, she was the wild child, always in trouble, while Alex was the perfect son. But somewhere along the way, she learned to play the game better. Now she's the one who makes passive-aggressive comments about how finally, Emily's not so perfect anymore. She takes quiet pleasure when I have to explain my allergy restrictions, rolling her eyes like I'm being dramatic on purpose. The lie I believed for so long was that strong women carry the family. Mom drilled it into me from childhood. We hold everything together, Emily. That's what women do. I didn't realize until much later that she meant only me. Everyone else got to learn. I was supposed to carry without complaint, without rest, without recognition. If you grew up as the family fixer, the scapegoat who somehow also became the emotional support human, you know exactly what I mean. You're the one who remembers everyone's food preferences, who smooths over arguments, who makes sure holidays happen. And when you finally set a boundary, suddenly you're the selfish one, the difficult one, the one ruining everything. Looking around that table that night, I saw all of it playing out in real time. My mom's careful, neutral expression. She wouldn't defend me if it meant conflict. Dad avoided eye contact. Ryan checking his phone under the table. Lauren's barely concealed smirk. Alex's parents exchanged that look, the one that said, "Boys will be boys." I spent years keeping detailed notes, not in a creepy way, just practical. Allergy-friendly recipes I'd researched, restaurants I'd vetted, the times Alex had forgotten, and I'd ended up in urgent care anyway. Screenshots of conversations where I'd begged him to take it seriously. Medical records. EpiPen prescriptions. All of it organized in a folder on my drive labeled health stuff. Practical Emily, always prepared. If I'd known what they were planning for the weeks after that dinner, the coordinated effort to paint me as hysterical, the flying monkeys they'd send my way, I would have acted sooner. Secured things better. Protect myself more thoroughly. But I didn't know yet. What I did know, sitting there with my heart pounding and that plate in front of me, was that the facade was cracking. And for the first time, I wasn't sure I wanted to be the one holding it together anymore. My mother always said, "Family takes care of family no matter what." I didn't realize it only applied to me. It started small, those sacrifices, the way they always do. A favor here, a loan there, nothing that felt like a big deal at the moment. But over time, they piled up, invisible weights I carried without question. I kept records. Not because I planned this, just habit. As a project manager, I'm wired that way. Spreadsheets for everything, timestamps, receipts scanned and filed. It made me feel in control, even when I wasn't. Take the first big one with my brother Ryan. It was 4 years ago, right after he wrapped up his third attempt at college. He'd gotten into some legal trouble, nothing violent but stupid, a DUI after a night out with friends. He called me at 2 a.m., voice shaky over the phone, the background noise of sirens fading as he whispered he was at the station. Mom was too upset to handle it. Dad was out of town for work. So I drove 3 hours in the pouring rain, my wipers slapping against the windshield, the smell of stale coffee from the thermos I'd grabbed on the way. By morning, I'd bailed him out, $2, $500 for my savings, plus another $1,200 for the lawyer I found through a work contract. I sat in that dingy waiting room, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, flipping through my phone to distract from the knot in my stomach. Ryan mumbled a thanks when he walked out, but that was it. No repayment plan, no real acknowledgement. A week later, at family dinner, Mom changed the subject when I brought it up gently. He's learned his lesson, she said, her fork pausing midair. And Ryan? He just grinned and asked if I could spot him for concert tickets next month. You know I'm good for it, sis. Current attitude? We never asked you to do that, he'd say now if pressed. As if I imagined the desperation in his voice that night. That set the pattern. If you've ever been to the family bank account, you understand the way they come to you first because you're reliable but forget to say thanks because reliability is just expected. Then there were my parents' lifestyle needs. They downsized after Dad retired early. His back issues from years in construction made it impossible to keep working. But downsized meant a cozy cabin upstate, the kind with a wraparound porch and a view of the lake. They bought it 5 years ago, and I helped with the down payment. $15,000 wired quietly so they could close on time. Mom had called it a family investment, her voice warm over the phone that day, like we were all in it together. But it didn't stop there. The maintenance crept in, roof repairs after a storm, $4,800, property taxes that somehow always came up short, $2,200 annually, utilities that Dad forgot to budget for. I set up quiet autopays from my account, linking them to alerts on my phone so I'd get the ping every month. Transfer complete. They'd pretend not to know about it, Mom mentioning offhand how things just worked out when we'd visit. I'd nod, smiling through the tightness in my chest. The way the cabin's wood smoke clung to my clothes long after I left. Over 5 years, it added up to over $45,000. Not counting the weekends I'd drive up to help with yard work, my hands blistered from raking leaves or painting fences, the sun beating down while Ryan texted excuses about being busy. The property itself, that cabin, became this symbol. They hosted family gatherings there, barbecues where everyone laughed and toasted, but I was always the one stocking the fridge beforehand, slipping away to handle the cleanup after. Years ago, when we transferred partial ownership to me for tax reasons, Mom's idea to keep it in the family, my lawyer insisted on adding a reversion clause to the deed. Just in case, she said, her pen hovering over the document in her office, the scent of fresh printer ink in the air. It allowed me to reclaim full control if certain conditions weren't met, like mutual maintenance or something vague about family obligations. I thought she was being paranoid, overthinking like lawyers do. Turns out she was being prophetic. And it wasn't just my immediate family. The sacrifices extended to the next generation, the ripples outward. Ryan's son, my nephew Tyler, who's 8 now. Smart kid, loves soccer. But his school district was rough, and private tuition was the only option according to Mom. 2 years ago, when Ryan's job fell through another temporary setback, they called me. Always the first call. I covered the first year's tuition, $8,500 plus uniforms and fees, another $1,200. Then the second year, same story. I'd wire the money, hear the relief in Mom's voice, but never the invitation to his games or birthdays unless it was last minute, like an afterthought. Family emergencies were my domain too. Aunt Linda's surgery last winter, $3,000 for the deductible because her insurance lapsed. Cousin Mike's car breakdown during a move, $800 for repairs, so he could get to his new job. Each time, the phone would ring late at night, the urgency in their voices pulling me in. I'd handle it, update the spreadsheet with dates and amounts, the soft glow of my laptop screen, the only light in my dark apartment. But invites? Those were sparse. Holiday dinners where I'd show up with sides I'd prepped, only to hear, "Oh, we didn't think you'd make it if I was late from work." Never the first invite, always the assumption I'd be there anyway. It was a one-way street, this pattern I'd built my life around. What I wanted was simple: belonging, reciprocity, a sense that my efforts mattered beyond the immediate fix. A thank you that wasn't laced with expectation for more. What I got was the role, the fixer, the bank, the one who made things smooth so everyone else could pretend life was effortless. I did it to prove I belonged, to earn my spot in the family narrative Mom wove so carefully. The evidence always pointed the other way. The ignored texts, the casual dismissals, the way they'd rally for Ryan but leave me to fend alone. Sitting at that engagement dinner, the tiramisu's aroma still lingering, mocking me, I felt the weight of it all pressing down. My throat itched, a reminder of my vulnerability, but it was the deeper itch, the realization that something had to give. That paperwork, the deed with its quiet clause, would become the most important thing I owned. But I didn't see how yet. The sacrifices had hidden me from myself for too long. Clarity was starting to burn through, hot and unrelenting. The table chatter picked up again almost immediately, like someone had pressed play on a paused video. Alex pushed the tiramisu aside with a laugh, muttering something about how I always ruin the fun, and the conversation shifted to wedding venues as if nothing had happened. Plates clinked, wine glasses refilled, Lauren asking Mom about centerpieces while Ryan scrolled his phone. Everyone pretended the air wasn't thick with the scent of hazelnut and betrayal. My throat still burned faintly from the proximity, the epinephrine I'd quietly taken under the table starting to ease the itch, but my pulse hammered in my ears, steady and loud. Then the pile-on started, subtle at first, the way it always does with families like mine. Dad didn't say a word. He just kept cutting into his steak, eyes fixed on his plate, the knife scraping softly with each slice. That silence was its own accusation. I'd caused discomfort, and now he had to endure it. Classic enabler move. Pretend nothing's wrong so no one has to address it. Ryan glanced up from his phone long enough to shrug. "Mom's right. You've been distant lately," he said, like he was commenting on the weather. Distant. As if I hadn't wired him money for Tyler's soccer cleats 2 weeks ago. As if he hadn't ignored my last 3 texts about planning the rehearsal dinner. Lauren leaned forward, that familiar smirk tugging at her lips, voice dripping with fake concern. "If you're struggling with everything, just say so. We can help." Help. From the woman who'd once borrowed my credit card for a shopping spree and paid me back in installments over 2 years. Her eyes sparkled. She thought this was it, the moment the perfect one finally cracked in public. Alex squeezed my hand under the table, his grip too tight, like he was anchoring me to the role I was supposed to play. "Come on, babe, it's just a joke. Lighten up." But Mom waited until the others had softened the ground. She set her fork down deliberately, the metal ringing against porcelain, and folded her hands in her lap. The table quieted without her asking. Everyone knew when she was about to speak. The room adjusted. She looked at me, not with anger, but with that slow, disappointed gaze she'd perfected over decades. She said it slowly, like she wanted each word to carve into me. "It's time you stopped relying on this family and grew up." Relying on this family. The words hung there, heavy as the chandelier above us. My chest tightened, not from the allergy this time, but from the sheer inversion of reality. Me. Relying on them. After the bailouts, the auto-pays, the tuition wires, the emergencies I'd handled alone in the dead of night. The worst part wasn't what she said. It was the silence after. Agreement. From everyone. Nods so subtle you could miss them if you weren't looking. Alex's parents exchanging that knowing glance. Lauren's lips pressing together to hide her satisfaction. Ryan already back on his phone like the matter was settled. They thought they'd won. Thought I'd shrink, apologize, smooth it over like I always had. The scapegoat finally put in her place. The fixer reminded she was only useful when caring. Something shifted inside me then. Not snapped. Snap implies chaos, breakage. This was clarity settling like a key into a lock.
Clean. Precise.
I excused myself quietly. Need the restroom, I murmured, voice steady even as my hands trembled slightly on the napkin I folded and placed beside my plate. No one argued. Why would they? I was always the one who came back. The hallway to the bathroom felt longer than it should, heels clicking on the marble floor, the murmur of the dining room fading behind me. The ladies' room was empty. Thank God, soft lighting, the faint scent of lavender from the diffuser on the counter. I locked myself in the farthest stall first, just to breathe, forehead pressed to the cool tile wall, counting heartbeats until the shaking eased. Then I stepped out and faced the mirror. I looked tired. Not dramatically so, but in the way that creeps up after years of carrying. Faint shadows under my eyes that no concealer fully hid. Hair still neat from the morning's effort, dress fitting perfectly because I'd planned every detail. But my reflection stared back like a stranger finally introducing herself. I wasn't being pushed out. I'd never truly been let in.
Not really.
All those years of proving, fixing, paying, I'd been standing at the door, knocking, while they took what they needed through the crack. My hands were steady now as I washed them, the water running cold over my wrists. I dried them slowly, watching the paper towel absorb the droplets. No tears. Just this quiet, thrumming resolve. What I did next, I did with complete calm. I returned to the table. No one noticed at first, Lauren mid-sentence about floral arrangements, Alex laughing at something his dad said. I picked up my coat from the back of my chair, the fabric cool against my fingertips. Slipped my phone into my purse. The ring, his grandmother's, reset for me, glinted under the lights as I moved. Alex finally looked up. Where are you going?
Home, I said.
Simple. No drama. No raised voice. He blinked, confused. But dessert? I was already turning. The chair scraped softly as I pushed it in. I didn't look back. They hadn't earned even a final glance. Outside, the December air hit me sharp and clean, biting through my coat but welcome. My breath fogged in front of me as I walked to the valet, hands steady as I handed over the ticket. The drive home was silent. No radio, no calls, just the hum of tires on pavement and the city lights blurring past. My apartment key turned in the lock with the same quiet click the clarity had made earlier. They didn't understand yet, but they would. I let myself into my apartment that night and closed the door with the softest click, like I didn't want to disturb whatever was shifting inside me. The space felt different immediately, quieter, but not empty. More like it had been waiting for me to finally decide whose life this actually was. The city lights filtered through the blinds in thin silver stripes across the hardwood, and the air smelled faintly of the lavender candle I'd forgotten to blow out that morning. No tears. No slamming doors. No frantic texts to friends. Just this deep, steady resolve settling into my bones like I'd finally come home to myself. I slipped off my heels by the door, the cool floor grounding under my feet, and walked straight to the bedroom. The closet light flicked on, soft and warm. I pulled out my suitcase, the big one I'd used for our planned honeymoon, and set it open on the bed. Then I went to the dresser where Alex had slowly migrated half his clothes over the years. Every t-shirt, every pair of jeans, every hoodie that still carried his cologne. I folded them neatly, methodically. Every shirt felt like a line being drawn. This one from our first vacation. This one from the weekend he moved in temporarily 3 years ago. This one I'd bought him last Christmas. Into the suitcase they went. Not thrown.
Placed.
Deliberate. When it was full, I zipped it closed, the sound sharp in the silence, and wheeled it to the front door, ready for whenever he came to collect it. I wasn't kicking him out with drama. I was simply removing him from my space, the way you'd clear a table after a meal that left you sick. Then I made tea, chamomile, the bag steeping while I watched the steam curl up in the dim kitchen light. Cup in hand, I sat on the couch and opened my laptop. The blue glow filled the dark living room, casting shadows on the walls. I know some people will say I should have talked first, sent a text, given warnings. But I was done talking. Years of explaining, justifying, smoothing over. And where had it gotten me? Sitting at a table being told I relied too much on the very people I'd carried. I opened the spreadsheet I'd kept for years. Not some bitter revenge ledger. I'd started it for taxes, for budgeting, because that's who I am. But seeing it all in one place now was like watching a lifetime spool out into numbers. Cold, undeniable rows and columns. Ryan's DUI bailout and lawyer, $3,700. Tyler's private school tuition, 2 years, $17,000. Parents' cabin down payment contribution, $15,000. Annual property taxes, 5 years, $11,000. Roof repair, $4,800. Aunt Linda's surgery deductible, $3,000. Ryan's various emergencies, another $8,400 scattered over time. Countless smaller wires I'd forgotten until the list reminded me. Grand total staring back at me, $87,920. I sat there for a long minute, tea cooling beside me, the cursor blinking. $87,920. More than a year's salary after taxes.
Gone.
No repayment. Barely any thanks. The tempo shifted then, from calm reflection to something decisive, almost surgical. I opened my banking app. First, the autopay for the cabin's property taxes. Highlight. Cancel recurring transfer. Confirmation pinged. Cancel. Next, the linked credit card they'd been authorized on for emergencies only, the one that had quietly covered Mom's new furniture last spring. Remove authorized users. Cancel. Then the streaming services I'd added them to, because it's easier if we're all on one account. Remove Ryan. Remove Mom. Remove Dad. Cancel. 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 The utility autopay for the cabin, set up after Dad couldn't figure out the online bill pay. Disabled. Each confirmation email felt like an exhale I'd been holding for decades. Small chimes in the quiet apartment. Transfer canceled. Access revoked. Payment stopped. They told me to stop relying on them.
So I did.
The irony tasted better than the tea. I closed those tabs and opened the folder labeled Legal, Cabin. There it was, the deed transfer from 5 years ago. I'd skimmed it back then, trusted Mom when she said it was just paperwork to help with our taxes. But my lawyer had insisted on the reversion clause. I'd thought it was unnecessary caution. The language was simple, buried in paragraph 7. If at any time the contributing party, me, withdrew financial support or if the arrangement was deemed no longer mutually beneficial, vaguely worded on purpose, ownership reverted fully and automatically to the contributor. No court battle required. No contest period. Just a quiet legal mechanism that transferred title back to me upon filing a simple form with the county. I'd scanned and saved everything back then. The signed deed. The lawyer's email explaining it. The recorded version from the county office. I read it again now, slowly. If they ever contested the arrangement, tried to claim I was abandoning family property or some nonsense, the clause triggered. Ownership reverted to me automatically. The cabin, their retirement dream, the place they hosted holidays, the asset they'd counted on, would be mine alone. I sat back in the dark, laptop warm on my thighs. They thought they held the power, the emotional leverage, the family narrative, the guilt. They had no idea. I closed the laptop. The room fell into darkness again, just the faint hum of the refrigerator and my own breathing. Not revenge. Not yet. Preparation. I went to bed that night and slept better than I had in years. 3 days passed before my phone rang. They had no idea what was coming. 3 days of radio silence stretched out like a held breath, and then the calls started. Not frantic checks on my well-being, not apologies for the dinner disaster. No, the first one was from Ryan, his name lighting up my phone screen while I was at work, mid-meeting with my team. I stepped out into the hallway, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, and answered with a calm, "Hello. What did you do? No, are you okay?" No, hey, sis, about the other night. Just pure, unfiltered entitlement, his voice pitching up like I'd pulled the plug on his personal ATM. The property tax notice came, it's overdue. And Tyler's school called about the tuition payment bouncing. Mom's freaking out. Fix this. I leaned against the wall, the cool plaster steadying me, and let a beat of silence hang. Then evenly, you told me to stop relying on the family. So I did. Mom's words from the dinner table, thrown back like a mirror. He sputtered, something about how that wasn't what she meant, how I was overreacting to a little joke. I hung up mid-sentence. The phone felt lighter in my hand. The escalation came fast after that. Dad's voicemail popped up an hour later, his voice in that fake reasonable tone he uses when he's trying to mediate without actually taking sides. Emily, honey, call me back. Your mother's upset about the cabin bills. We need to sort this out. Family, right? No mention of the prank, the allergy, the way they'd all sat there in agreement while Alex nearly killed me for laughs. Their worry was about the money drying up, not me. Not the years I'd poured into them. By evening, it overreached into stupidity. An email from their lawyer, a cheap family friend they'd used for Dad's retirement papers, attached a formal petition demanding I resume familial financial obligations or face legal action for abandonment of shared assets. The cabin specifically. They claimed partial ownership entitled them to my continued support. Idiots. That petition, with its stamped date and signatures, Mom's careful cursive, Dad's scrawl, even Ryan's added for good measure, triggered everything. I forwarded it straight to my own lawyer, the one who drafted the deed years ago. We met the next morning at her office, the scent of strong coffee and leather-bound books filling the space. She scanned it over her glasses, lips quaking in that professional way that meant she'd seen this nonsense before. They triggered it themselves, she said, tapping the clause on the printed deed. The moment they filed that petition contesting the arrangement, ownership reverts to you. Automatically. No dispute needed. Just file this affidavit with the county, and it's done. She slid the form across the desk, pre-filled with my details. The cabin's yours. Lock, stock, and Lakeview. I nodded, folding the paper carefully into my bag. No rush of joy, no fist pump. Just certainty, solid as the oak desk between us. This wasn't luck. It was the paper trail I'd built without knowing I'd need it, the ammunition from years of quiet preparation. The stranger at the dinner? Turns out he'd filmed the whole prank, posted it anonymously on social media with a caption about allergy awareness. It went semi-viral overnight, tagging allergy advocacy groups. Alex's work saw it. He got a talking to about professionalism. But that was just the spark. This, with the family, was the fire. I chose the location for the meeting carefully. A public diner downtown, the kind with vinyl booths and clinking coffee cups, familiar enough to keep me grounded. Mom and I used to come here for pie after my high school games, but public enough to prevent scenes. Witnesses mattered. The hum of lunchtime chatter would carry their fall, subtle but undeniable. They arrived together, a united front. Mom in her pressed blouse, Dad trailing behind, Ryan slouching with that perpetual chip on his shoulder. No Alex, he'd texted once, a half-assed, "We need to talk," but I'd blocked him after packing his stuff and leaving it with the doorman. Lauren wasn't there either. This was my family's mess. They slid into the booth across from me like defendants entering a courtroom, the vinyl squeaking under them. The diner smelled of greasy fries and fresh brew, a server wiping down the counter nearby, glancing our way. Mom started, voice low but sharp. "Emily, this has gone far enough. Whatever happened at the dinner, Alex was just joking. You're blowing everything up over nothing. Reinstate the payments and we'll forget this." I placed the thick folder on the table with a soft thud. Not the legal documents. Those were mine to file later. This was the reckoning. "This isn't about the law," I said calmly. "This is about the truth." I opened it, spreading out the printed spreadsheets, receipts, bank statements, categorized by year, by person, color-coded because that's how I process. 20 years of hidden sacrifices laid bare. Ryan's section first. The DUI bailout, $3,700. Tyler's tuition, $17,000. The loans that never came back, $8,400. His face went slack, eyes widening as he scanned the totals. "You paid this much?" "For me." Dad's turn. The cabin down payment, $15,000. Taxes, $11,000. Repairs, $4,800. He shifted, hands fidgeting with a napkin, shredding it into strips. We appreciated it, but we never asked. You didn't have to. I cut in, using his own enabler logic against him. Family takes care of family, right? Mom's mantra, twisted back. Mom's pages were the thickest. Utilities, emergencies, the quiet auto-pays she'd pretended not to notice. Aunt Linda's surgery, $3,000. The furniture, the holidays I'd funded. Her mask held at first, that controlled expression, but as she flipped through, her fingers trembled. For all of us? All this time? The diner patrons nearby pretended not to notice, but heads turned subtly, a couple at the next booth pausing their conversation, the server slowing her pour of coffee. Public enough for the humiliation to sting, their voices carrying just far enough. Then the villain realizes the moment. I slid the legal deed across, the reversion clause highlighted in yellow. You told me to stop relying on the family, I said, echoing Mom's words from the dinner again, slow and deliberate like she'd done. So I did. And when you filed that petition contesting the arrangement, you triggered this. I explained calmly, voice even as the diner's chatter hummed around us. Ownership reverts to me automatically. No court, no fight. The cabin's mine now. You didn't lose it because of me. You lost it because you tried to take something that wasn't yours. Shock rippled across their faces in waves. Ryan's mouth hung open, the golden child facade crumbling into boyish panic, eyes darting like he was calculating his next bailout. Dad's shoulders slumped, the enabler unmasked, his avoidance tactics useless against hard evidence, face paling as if seeing his own complicity for the first time. But Mom, her mask finally cracked. The emotional thermostat shattered. Her lips parted, eyes widening not just in surprise but in raw, dawning horror, the lines around her mouth deepening as the victim narrative she'd clung to dissolved. Color drained from her cheeks, hands pressing flat on the table like she needed to steady the world. They weren't just shocked. They were unmasked, exposed as the takers they'd always been, in front of strangers sipping coffee and waitstaff who now openly stared. Silence fell over our booth, thick and buzzing, broken only by the clatter of a dropped fork from across the room. What they were planning, the coordinated guilt trip, the flying monkeys like Ryan's calls, the info diet they'd tried to keep me on, all of it closed now, loops tied off in this public unraveling. The ammunition for my folders, the stranger's video that had already cost Alex his easy charm at work, the medical records I'd quietly sent to his HR about the prank for good measure. All resolved, laid bare. I stood, smoothing my coat, the fabric crisp under my fingers, pulled out a $1 bill from my wallet, crisp, unfolded, and placed it on the table. That's all that remains. Everything else I already gave. And you didn't even see it. I turned toward the door, steps measured, the bell jingling as I pushed it open. Mom's voice cracked behind me. Emily, wait. Raw, pleading, the controller finally losing grip. I didn't turn back. The door closed with a final chime. Outside, the cold air hit me like freedom, sharp and invigorating, carrying the scent of impending snow. Cars rushed by, life moving on. They understood now. And I was done carrying. The days after the diner meeting carried a different kind of quiet. Not the tense, eggshell silence I'd grown up navigating. The one that meant someone was upset and I needed to fix it. This was deeper, cleaner. Not being shut out. The silence you earn after telling the truth. My apartment felt lighter almost immediately. Sunlight poured through the windows in the mornings now, golden and unfiltered, catching dust motes in the air like tiny sparks. I'd pulled the curtains all the way open the day after I walked out of the restaurant, and I'd left them that way. The hardwood floors gleamed warmer, the rooms breathed easier, without Alex's things scattered around. I woke up to birds outside instead of notifications from family group chats I'd finally muted. Coffee tasted better. Sleep came deeper. A week later, my lawyer called to confirm everything was final. The reversion affidavit had been filed and recorded with the county. No hiccups, no challenges. The cabin was legally mine alone. She asked if I wanted to pursue anything else. repayment of the loans, formal demands, maybe even emotional damages tied to the allergy incident. Her tone was professional but gentle, like she knew what my answer would be. I told her no. Justice doesn't need to be loud to be real, I said. She chuckled softly, the sound of someone who'd seen too many people chase vengeance instead of peace. We ended the call with her wishing me well, and I hung up feeling settled. Not triumphant, just free. There was one brief communication from my family about 10 days after the dinner. An email from Dad, short, no guilt trips, no flying monkeys attached. We're figuring things out here. The cabin sale will help cover some gaps. Take care of yourself. No apology, no acknowledgement of the spreadsheets or the years. But also no demands. I read it twice, sitting at my kitchen table with morning light slanting across the screen, then archived it. Maybe they'll grow from this. Maybe they'll blame me forever. Either way, it wasn't my weight anymore. I'm not reconciled with them. I don't hate them either. Some doors close, so you can finally walk through others. I've gone low contact, holidays skipped, messages unanswered unless necessary. The info diet is permanent now, and it feels like breathing after years underwater. One Saturday morning, a couple of weeks after everything settled, I drove up to the lake alone. Not to the cabin. I'd listed it with a realtor the day the title cleared, but to a public trail nearby that I'd always loved. The air was crisp, pine-scented, the ground crunching under my boots with early frost. I walked for hours, no playlist, no podcast, just the rhythm of my steps and the wind through the bare branches. Halfway up the ridge, I stopped at an overlook where the water stretched out silver and endless below. I stood there, hands in my pockets, breath fogging in the cold, and felt lighter. Not because I'd won. Because I'd finally put down a weight I was never meant to carry. The heaviest chains are the ones we put on ourselves. Looking back, I hadn't abandoned my family. I'd stopped abandoning myself. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors with locks you control. Boundaries aren't punishments. They're invitations for people to meet you with respect. Some people will only see your worth when you're no longer there to give it away for free. Maybe they'll understand someday. Maybe they won't. I walk forward anyway. Alex tried once more, a long text about how he never meant to hurt me, and could we talk? I didn't reply. The ring went back to his mother via mail, no note. The video from the restaurant stranger had done its work. Mutual friends told me his job let him go quietly after the optics became an issue. I don't check his socials. I don't need to. My life is quieter now. Steadier. Finally my own. Work is going well. Promotion came through last month, the one I'd been too distracted to chase before. I'm dating casually, nothing serious. Just enjoying meeting people who don't expect me to manage their emotions. Weekends are mine. Hikes, books, brunches with friends who've always seen me clearly. If this story echoes something in your life, I'd love to hear your thoughts below. Have you ever had that moment where clarity hit harder than anger? When you realized carrying everyone wasn't strength, it was surrender. And if you've been through something similar, the family scapegoat, the fixer who finally stopped fixing, know this. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. Some people will only learn your value in your absence. Let them. Subscribe if you want more stories of people who finally said enough. Because sometimes the real revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming someone they can no longer reach. Thanks for watching.